Welcome to the Business of Life podcast. Don't let fear and disengagement dictate the way you run your business or your life. Revolutionize the way things are done. Innovate, affect change, find your purpose. Friends, welcome to another episode of the Business of Life podcast. It's November for me, which means it's Movember, and the Mo is definitely in full swing. This year, I'm raising awareness for men's mental health. About 1 man every minute worldwide dies from suicide, which is just unacceptable. I think as men, we need to really open up the conversation to our brothers and our friends that when you feel hopeless, when you feel down, when you're in the grips of anxiety and depression, that it's all right to tell someone else and it's all right to get support. We need to make the conversation as normal as talking about pulling your hammy after a game of footy. Let's try and give hope to our friends when they feel in these grips, because when you feel like you've got no one to talk to and you can't and there's a stigma around it, it's really hard to put yourself out there, and then you're isolated and you get disengaged, and that's where the problems start. So we need to really create a culture where it's all right to go and get help and get support when you need it, because those statistics are ones that we shouldn't be seeing. So if you know anyone doing Movember, get out there, donate to them, support their causes. There's so many different causes that Movember goes for. So whoever you know doing it, get out there and support them. And today on the podcast, friends, we get to do something that I love so much about talking to people. We get to delve into the journey of someone who's got to the top of their field, looking at how they got there and the troubles that they faced on the way. The guy we're talking to today, I mean, if you read magazines, if you've seen billboards, if you consume pretty much any type of media, you would have seen his photos. We're talking to world-renowned photographer and director Tom Barnes. Now, this guy's interesting for a few reasons. One of the main reasons that, apart from being obviously one of the best photographers in the world, he made the switch from being one of the top music photographers in the world to commercial photography. In an industry as tough as photography is and as competitive as photography is, making a switch is really difficult. But when you make a switch and then become one of the top photographers in commercial photography after you've been a music photographer, now that's phenomenal. I think probably worldwide there's maybe 2-3 people who have managed to do that successfully, and Tom's one of them. And he's still doing it today, and he's talking about making a new pivot. So if you're a freelancer or you're a creative, this is going to be a great episode for you. So he answers a lot of questions about how to really navigate the early years of your career and into your freelancing, how to try and get those type of clients you want and what to do when it comes to difficult clients and creating visions together. So please join with me in welcoming Tom Barnes.
Hey, no worries. Thank you very much for having me on. How are you doing?
I'm going good, my friend. Yourself?
Yeah. Do you know what? Doing all right. I managed to knock over a litre of lemonade in my office today. Other than that, doing all right.
Yeah, better than some other things you probably could knock over. So yeah, well done, mate. Well done indeed.
True. And it did just hit the floor. So, and it only went over one of the servers. So, and if you're a client watching this, everything's fine.
Too right, mate. Too right. Well, Tom, today on the episode, I was wanting to kind of delve into your story of how you got to where you are in your career now. For everyone who doesn't know Tom, you've pretty much reached the top of the field when it comes to photography, where you are now.
I don't know. That's.
Well, yeah.
I'm a photographer. I take photos of people. I've never been good at hearing things like that. I love my job. I guess that's as much as I would say about it.
Yeah. Well, you do win awards, so you do all right.
I have been lucky enough to have won some awards in the past.
Yeah, good man. Humble as ever. Humble as ever.
I'm trying. I'm actually full of myself. Oh, all these awards. Yeah, no big deal. No, honestly, it's always odd. I still, and I think, I'm sure the listeners or viewers will, if they don't understand or haven't ever had imposter syndrome, it's something that kind of just haunts creative types. And I think has haunted me my entire career, even to the point now where, I could probably turn around and be like, oh, I'm really proud of what I've accomplished. I still have that kind of, yeah, I've won the awards, but maybe it was the timing. Yeah, maybe it wasn't the work. Maybe it was something else. So imposter syndrome still very much my bag.
So yeah, still like going into a shoot, something like that, does it play on you quite a bit?
Do you know what? Funnily enough, no. Like, so going into a shoot, I almost kind of become, I don't know, you kind of, no. And the reason I tell you why it doesn't is when you're on set, when you're going into a shoot, you need to make sure everyone is comfortable with what they're doing. They need to make sure they feel comfortable being told what to do if it's an assistant. They need to be comfortable being asked what to do if it's model or talent. And they need to know what they're going to get if it's the client, for example. So there's no doubt in my mind. When I've gone through the front door, there's no doubt in my mind at all. I am the most confident man in the room without being cocky. The client feels good. The model feels like, she or he is part of the shoot, but also confident that they know that what we're all after. There's nothing worse than when you kind of go into a shoot and someone goes, "Do you know what we're doing?" I go, "I don't. I've got no idea. Do you know?" That sort of shoot, you're never going to get a good result from it because the photographer hasn't planned, or stuff like that. So as far as imposter syndrome goes, it's very much when I'm sat on my own in the office, maybe, or when people are saying nice things like you've just said, I suddenly kind of crumple inside and be like, "Oh, no, I don't know about that." But yeah, on shoots, the photographer, really, the buck stops with them. So there can't be any doubt there. You need to be, without overbearing, you need to be confident of what you're going for, confident of how you're going to achieve it. And a lot of that just comes down to the planning. So,
It is good. I think it's good to hear it's quite comforting, I guess, in a way, that knowing that people who, still are up, high up in their career level still get the same kind of feeling that a lot of people do at the start. I remember hearing a story from Ricky Gervais, one of his tour managers, saying that when you go into his live shows, everything's blacked out. Like the only lights you see are the firelight exits, and nothing's lit up in the auditorium. And apparently it's because he gets so kind of nervous going onto stage, and he doesn't want to see anyone in the crowd, or doesn't want to know people are there, because he's worried that they won't find him funny or something. I'm not surprised. That. Yeah,
I'm not surprised. But imagine looking out into the crowd and seeing one bloke sat there, being like, "Go on, be funny." Go on. Like that'd completely throw me, and that's probably the reason I am not a stand-up comic.
Yeah. Well.
But yeah, it doesn't surprise me. I think that's actually quite a sensible thing to do.
Yeah, true. If you don't feel a bit weird and anxious about that type of thing, then...
No, I actually now might go into all my shoots with the lights off.
Yeah, well, romantic.
Desperately not. Well, can you imagine? I've gone for the ambience. But yeah, no, it's I think imposter syndrome. Everyone struggles from it. I think to a point. It's I think as it's kind of funny, right? It must be like a bell curve. So at the start of your career, everything's new. So you don't maybe have the experience to feel imposter syndrome because actually everything's cool and new and exciting. And then you get to a point in your career and it starts to level off. And then I think it stays at that level for a very long time. And then I think you kind of reach elite level and then maybe it drops off. I'm still very much at the plateau. I don't think I'll ever reach elite level, but
have you ever turned down work because you didn't quite feel like you could take it or do it?
No. The thing is, I'm a bit of a technician really when it comes to stills. So like, if someone goes, "Got this idea," I'm like, "Yep, cool, great, let's do it." I've got to figure it out afterwards. So we do you mind if I say that I have a podcast?
No, go
this bit out. So I have a podcast as well, and we interviewed a guy called Art Stryber, who's an amazing photographer from the States, and he said he'd answer the phone and basically go, "Yes," And that would be it. He would then figure out every other detail after he'd agreed to do whatever it was. And I've never quite been that confident, but like I have kind of always just said yes, because my stuff has been like not overly complicated, because I've always kind of subscribed to the KISS method, the keep it simple, stupid kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But for me, no, I don't. There's been reasons that I've turned down work, but not from a creative point of view.
Okay, makes sense. So can you run
And
us through your career progression? Like how'd you get started?
I mean, how far do you want to go back?
Well, let's go.
We can go way back if you really want.
How about into kind of the first paid type of things?
First paid. Right. So we're going back to university when I had gone to study economics in Sheffield.
Right.
So before that, photography very much a big hobby of mine, probably the biggest hobby other than mountain biking. And but I had been told by an uncle, shout out to Stephen if you're watching. I'd had a phone call. He probably doesn't even remember having this phone call, but I'd rung him. He's a producer, and I'd rung him and I said, "Look, do you think it's a good idea for me to go and study photography at uni?" And after about 5 minutes, after he'd stopped laughing and he picked himself up, he said, "Absolutely not. Do not study photography at university. Go and study something proper." And I said, "Oh, what do you mean?" He goes, "Look, photography is one of the most competitive kind of fields you could go into. They don't care if you've studied it. It just is completely irrelevant. You will be judged solely on your body of work." Yeah. And your work ethic and your punctuality and how you deal with people, but at no point. And actually, to this day, still, I have never been asked for my qualifications or a CV. People go, "Yeah, I like your work, we'll hire you." So I thought I would go and study urban land economics, which was effectively a property degree in Sheffield. And it basically meant that I had suddenly loads of time with no responsibilities, where I could just take my camera and just vanish. Like I would disappear for days, and I would go out and I would camp in the Peak District, or I would go and I would take long exposures of roundabouts. And I found when I was at uni, I suddenly had all this spare time when I wasn't in class or meant to be working, and I had all this amazing spare time. So that was my first year of uni. And then things started happening. I kind of went to a couple of gigs, like I had been, because for the people who don't know me, I started off originally as a music photographer. So, I used to go from age of 14, 15, I was at these, gigs in my local town, taking photos, amazing photos. I wouldn't say underexposed, I'd say almost black. But, they were these shocking things. But I can't play any musical instruments. I tried to play bass once. Yeah. Kind of as far as it went. But like, I would go and my contribution, instead of playing music, would be my contribution would be taking these photos. And so I would, show all these people the photos, and then they were like, "Oh, these are cool. Yeah, man, great." And this is before social media and stuff. So no one really had any use for the photos. Like they would just be like, "Oh, thanks. I'll store them in my email." and that would be it. It'd be like, cool, long-term storage. Yeah. But then in the kind of the midway towards mid to end of my first year, I started getting more involved in the music scene in Sheffield. And I went to one of the first gigs of a band called Bring Me the Horizon. And I had just kind of started getting a bit of traction for my photography on a place called MySpace. Oh, yeah. Now, I very much hate, obviously, letting people know how old I am, because obviously people look at this and go, "God, he must be 21." But I'm not. Sorry to disappoint. But I was big on MySpace, and I used to have a rotating GIF of me with the camera in front of my face, and people used to think that was the most amazing thing ever, even if it was just shot against a bedsheet in my old apartment. And but I got in touch with this band. And I said, I've never done this before, because up until that point, I'd only ever done live music. And I was just like, "Do you guys want to do some promo shots?" And a guy called Ollie, the vocalist, who ended up becoming a good friend of mine, was like, "Yeah, cool, let's do it." So we went and hung out in a graveyard where one of the guys in the band dropped one of my flashes and broke it. And so we had to shoot the whole shoot pretty much with natural light. Five dudes with floppy hair in a graveyard with a photographer who had literally no clue what he was doing. But then they posted that to their MySpace. I then started working with other bands, and it kind of all snowballed a little bit until the kind of maybe my final year of uni, and I get a phone call. I'm in America. I'm on a tour bus with a band called Slipknot, and it's my head of faculty at university going, "Tom, your attendance record is not good." So I was like, "Look, what do I need to do? How can I fix this?" And they very kindly send me a bit of coursework, which I then did back in the hotel. Sent it back. I was due to fly back 2 days later anyway, so I flew back. Having done that, I then attended absolutely every single minute of university for the rest of the year. My attendance record went up to, I think, like 18%, which was enough, and I graduated with a 2.2. Very pleased with myself. But I guess at that point, when we're all sat around in uni and people are going, "Oh, you're going to apply for jobs. What are you going to go and do?" And I was like, I'm already doing it. Like, I didn't think I'd ever do this, and I'm already, all over the world photographing, people for Kerrang magazine, and like, I just got a double page, kind of 5-page feature in Photography Monthly, if you remember that magazine. And I kind of came back from uni, and I still live in Sheffield, but I came back to visit. I saw my family, and I said, "Mum, look, I think I want to be a photographer. What do you think?" She goes, "Well, it depends really if you're going to be a successful photographer." And I was like, "Well, it's a valid point, right?" So I gave her the copy of Photography Monthly and opened it up to a 5-page feature on me. And I just went, "I promise you, I will be successful." And she was like, "All right, I'll see how it goes." And so luckily, to this day, still haven't had to use my degree, and it is still going all right.
Yeah, mate, that's good. So it just started with kind of putting yourself out there, just trying something and, building contacts.
For everyone it does. I mean, I think, there's photographers I hear of, and, lots email me and they say, "I'm struggling to get started. My passion is extreme snowboarding, but I want to photograph weddings." And you go, "What? Why are you doing that? Why would you people, your wedding photographs won't be that good because your heart's not in it." I feel that if you want to do wedding photography, you want to do wedding photography. It's the same if you want to take macros of flowers.
Yeah.
You got your passion's got to be there. Because if you, for example, spun that around and you actually didn't do weddings and you took, photographs of extreme snowboarding, which is your passion, you're going to be more inclined to network. You're going to be more inclined to attend different events. You're going to be more inclined to be around people that are relevant. I'm a firm believer in people not doing things for the money and people kind of following their passion. And because I feel that people's work can not suffer. I feel people's work really can be buoyed and benefit from the photographer's passion. Yeah. Like if you're a photographer and you hate what you're shooting or you're not enjoying it, people will be able to tell. Yeah. Like they just will. You can see when you look at someone's work and you go, "I think the photographer really loves his job." I just think there's a certain level of care, detail, attention that comes with being invested in what you're creating. Yeah. If you look at my website, I've spent hours, weeks curating how the images are laid out. Some of the galleries are starting to have video intros and I've really spent time doing it and organizing it all out. I've just come off a call with someone who was just like, actually your website's one of the most nicely curated ones we've seen. And I was just like, stop it. But it was, it's really nice to hear that. But I feel that people who don't have the passion for something, they're not going to think about, how they're going to curate the files or the photographs on their website. They're not going to feel, they're not going to they're not going to be able to create a unanimous, no, not unanimous, like an overarching theme. Like, I feel if you look at my website, you look at all the photographs and go, they're taken by the same guy.
Yeah.
You know, there's the same energy, same vibe, same grade, same lighting, not same lighting, but like the whole overarching style, right?
Yeah.
And I feel that you really have to be invested in what you're shooting to be able to create that. And the more you do that and the more you invest, the more proud you'll feel of what you're creating, and then the less you'll feel imposter syndrome.
Yeah. And I think that's like, you hear it from people. A guy I interviewed a few weeks back, Jesse, who owns a baseball team in the States, like he was saying for the initial part of things, their big focus was revenue. Like, we need revenue. And I think a lot of people have a similar mentality where it's like, how can I monetize this? And how can I, make money out of it? And a lot of what you'll see then is they'll follow the kind of template that other people have done, and so, oh, they made money that way, I'll do that then. And it's kind of, you kind of divert away from what you actually want to do and go for the more safe option. So your innovation drops. You find that kind of everything else that goes along with someone who really, I guess, chases something they're actually interested in, their passion, fades away, and you just get a kind of monotonous thing that they're just there to try and get money. And it never seems to really last, because like you said, you won't put in all the extra things that come with something that you're actually interested in, all the other things that surround it, which you might not be able to add direct value. There's no ROI on stuff like that necessarily that you can equate straight away, but overall it builds something that does in the long run.
Yeah, of course. I mean, the thing is, whether people in the creative industries like to admit it or not, you're creating a brand for yourself. And the thing is, you do sort of, I feel, obviously an economics graduate, funny this, but like, I do feel like you have to exercise both sides of the brain, right?
Yeah.
So if you are purely focused on the art, you're probably not going to make any money, but you'll be very happy with the art. Whereas if you focus purely on the business side of things, you might make some money, but you might not be happy because it won't be what you want to shoot. So there's got to be this kind of this center ground where you are exercising the right brain enough to be creative and proud of what you're creating, but you're exercising the left part of the brain. So because you are running a business, especially now. I think 20 years ago, there could have been photographers who just focus on the art. They would sign with an agent, and then the agent would handle all the business side of things. And they would just be able to create this amazing art, right? But I just don't feel now that is necessarily kind of maybe a legitimate path, because there are so many more photographers. The number of agents hasn't really changed that much. So the chances are, and as fees and stuff have gone down, it's a tough one. I mean, here's the base fact. If you want to be rich, you're probably not going to go and work in the creative industries.
Yeah.
Bluntly, go into banking. Yeah. Go in and sell funds and stuff. There's money there dealing with money.
Yeah.
Whereas, if you want to be, if you want to have like a decent life and be artistically comfortable, then maybe the arts could be the way to go. But you've got to exercise both parts of the brain. And also, what's amazing, sorry, I know I'm rambling.
Right.
What's amazing is that it's never been easier to flex both parts of the brain.
Yeah.
If you go, man, I do not know whether I should be VAT registered. Quick Google. All right, maybe I should be.
Yeah.
It's 20 years ago, you'd have to have a long drawn out call with an accountant who would have to know your business inside and out. He'd be like, well, maybe you should, maybe you shouldn't. Here's the advantages. Whereas now, you quick Google. It's the same with learning all the techniques for photography. Yeah. YouTube. It seems to be one of YouTubers' main things, is giving all the secrets away, and actually, more power to them.
Yeah, the how-tos are massive, aren't they? So how much do you reckon I guess like early on in your career, how much did you have to do, kind of shoot some work that would make money versus things you actually wanted to do? Or were you able to overlap them pretty nicely?
I was really lucky, because I wasn't aware that you could do work that you didn't like. So and this goes back to what I'm talking about when you're driven by passion and stuff.
Yeah.
You don't feel like you're working, because I'd come from photographing gigs to then photographing gigs, then to photographing musicians, then to touring the world and photographing for publications, bands, record labels, you name it. I didn't ever. I was just, by the time I came out of university, I think when you start a business, there's a couple of years buffer, right? And a lot of people are working full time doing a job and wanting to go freelance.
Yeah.
And then there's, they'll take a day off from their day job to go and do the freelance job. And then slowly, as the freelance job takes over, then there'll be a point where they can jump off between the two. For me, that happened at university. So my kind of experience was that I just had the time, because I was a university student. I had the time, and actually, if I was in America for a week, it wouldn't really matter that much.
Yeah.
So I never had the jumping off. So I think when I came out of university, I was already doing what I wanted to do, and I was already, big on MySpace, and working with a different band every other day, and suddenly getting phone calls and be like, "Do you want to go out to Europe for a month?" And I wasn't tied to the UK at all. I was just like, "Yeah, I'll go wherever." Great.
Yeah.
I toured the world, had an amazing time, and so it never occurred to me that I needed to do something for money, because I was already doing that for money.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But I know a lot of people, and I know a lot of people do the stuff they don't want to do to get cash in, and the easy solution, if you have to do that, is don't display what you don't want to shoot.
Yeah.
So say, for example, you want to photograph corporate, you don't want to photograph corporate headshots, but you've got a big company who's asked you to photograph 500 employees. Well, you do it, but you just don't show it.
Yeah.
So actually what will happen is you'll end up you'll do a great job there. They'll be really happy with it. And if they recommend you to another company, well, you can do that as well. Because you've got the work, you can show them in your PDF, and stuff like that. So you can obviously go off and do it. But if you don't want to be known for that, or you don't want to be hired for that, people who go to your website will hire you for what you display. They're not going to hire you. They're not going to look at, you don't look at my work of South Korea and be like, "Oh, can you go and photograph a makeup melting onto a burger?" Or they're not. I'm not going to get like a still life job based on my portfolio. So it all comes down to what you display.
Yeah, that's true. And it'd be interesting. It kind of brings me to a point I was thinking of earlier, where I guess a lot of people, especially when you're young, maybe coming out of uni, high school, you get an idea of what you think you want to do. Mm-hmm. Maybe you start pursuing it, and you kind of base everything that you do in life on that axiom of, this is kind of what I want to do. Mm-hmm. And some people might find after a year or two it's not their thing, and they want to change, but they've kind of made their mind up that this is what they're going to do, so they just keep pursuing something that they don't really want to do. And I know for you, obviously now you're not a music photographer at all. You've gone on to different things. What brought that pivot on for you? Because it must have seemed like at some point you're like, right, I'm a music photographer, like this is what I do. And then
I was a fairly well-known music photographer. I think I was like a principal for one of the big magazines here in the UK. I was doing a lot of stuff for some American magazines, a lot of stuff for European stuff. Record labels were hiring me, and it was great. It was great until I realized that music's a funny world, and actually there's a lot of making people look tough. Or the trouble is, in music, as the fees have kind of dropped and there's been less money available, people have wanted to play it a bit more safe. And so I would get a lot of the similar requests, and I kind of felt that creatively there must be more. Like creatively, there must be a bigger world than the music photography, because more often than not, you're photographing 5 guys. There is only a certain number of ways you can pose 5 guys, right? Like it's a big group to be able to photograph. And so for me, I just thought, what's outside of this world? And like I had a couple of things happen. I was just like, do you know what? I'm done. And like, and it was good. It was a really nice realization that I could pivot. And pivoting for me has been really important. Like I'm in the middle of doing one again now. And it's an amazing feeling, because actually, you're only really constrained by what you want to do. I speak to a lot of friends of mine who are like, I don't know what I want to do, and then they end up shooting the same stuff. And actually, I'm just like, well, look, figure out what it is you want to go and do, and then go and do it. As photographers, we've never had so much access to people who want to be photographed. It's very easy to find people for your ideas and stuff like that. Obviously, always be responsible and safe, but like, it's always, it's very easy to find people who now are happy to try things out and experiment and do various things. And for me, flexibility has to be probably the most important, skill a photographer has got to have now. Because I think, again, going 10, 15 years ago, we would only photograph what we showed in our portfolio. But now people are like, you need to shoot this, and you need to shoot a moving portrait to go with it, and you need to shoot this. And the briefs that come in are not for one portrait like this. They're going to be one portrait like that works across loads of different mediums, and then that is also going to incorporate a moving, like a motion element as well. And so I feel that people who don't like what they're shooting but they kind of have committed to it, uncommit yourself. Like it's literally it's just yourself. Because when I was in music, I there was a stage where I thought I would never get out of music, and then I just did it. But
was there a cost for you?
I just did it. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, massive cost. That's what I was going to say. I sound so flippant when I was like, oh, I just did it. I saved for a year and a half, knowing that if I was just going to one day just stop, there was going to be a void of work. Because obviously you don't go from shooting, from one thing to instantly being as busy as you have been, but in a completely different field. All of these things take years to build up.
How long did it take you to kind of gain traction? And when you shifted, I'm mentioning that was the shift into portrait photography from there. How long did that take?
Probably 2 and a bit years.
Yeah.
Because when I was doing, I was really lucky in the way that when in kind of from the last 4 years that I was doing music, I didn't touch live music photography at all, ever. So I would be doing studio stuff or magazine stuff and things like that. And we're talking about being flexible. So I would work with an amazing magazine called Shortlist, which is sadly no longer with us, but I would work with them, and they'd be like, oh, can you photograph this musician? And then 2 months later, I'd get a phone call from them going, you did a really good job with that. It's not a music guy, but what about photographing this? And I'd be like, cool, great. You're fine. I'll do it. I'm a music guy, but I'll do it. And so actually, when the time came for me to pivot and change, I had a lot of non-music work already shot. So it was a case of just displaying less of the music stuff on the website. And stuff like that. And I think now to this day, I have 2 music photographs, maybe 3 music photographs in my entire portfolio of 700 images.
Yeah.
And that's it. Metallica / and that might be it. Quite good ones, to be fair. They're quite fun. But that was it. And so I think it probably took me maybe a year, maybe 2 years to build up to where I was financially.
Yeah.
So it's tough. There were a couple of months in the middle of that where I was like, oh God, have I made the right decision? Have I done the right thing? Have I thought this through enough? Have I planned it out enough?
Did you go back at all? Like when it got to those points where it was, what kept you going forward?
I did the occasional thing, right? So my view on it was that I was going to do certain jobs of a certain level. Yeah. So, Kerrang rang me one day and said, do you want to go to Milan to photograph Metallica? And I was like, yes. Absolutely, I would love to do that. And so, technically wasn't on brand still, but, I've always liked Metallica.
Yeah.
Turns out I went to school with their chef.
Yeah.
So shout out to Simon. But there were only a few times where I did that. And then a lot of the time I was just like, I was busy enough with other stuff that I didn't ever feel guilty about turning stuff down. And I think what's important is that when I did turn stuff down, I always had recommendations for people who kind of shot in maybe a similar way or could shoot in a similar way to what the client was asking for. So I never ever just went, sorry, no. I said, I'm really sorry, I'm booked up or I can't do this. But I do actually have a couple of recommendations for you. Try these guys.
Yeah.
And so the thing is, you always, as someone who provides a service for a client, you always want to be helpful, even when you're unhelpful. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it's quite good. So in terms of like you with your, I guess, like customer service side of things,
Mm-hmm.
for you, who is the customer, the kind of end client who's paying? Is that how do you kind of make sure, like, what's your way of looking at how you deal with them for them to kind of get the best out of you?
Oh, that's a good question.
I've always wondered for most big businesses and that will have customer service departments and they've got that mandate. But I was like, I guess like the photographer and creatives are interesting because you've got, say, the talent or whoever you're photographing, and then you've also got the end user, and then there's you in the middle who you might have conflicting views everywhere of how things should be run or how they want to be looked. How things look.
Do you know what's interesting is normally ahead of the shoots I do now, there have been so many calls or meetings that actually when we're on set, it's very smooth and seamless because we've already had those discussions.
Yeah.
We've already, ironed out the kind of the small print really. And so actually I do very much feel that most of the jobs I do now are very much collaborative. So, you'll go and do these shoots, but there's a respect from me to the client, but also from the client to me. So there's, it's not as if they have just pulled someone from a phone book and they don't know who it is.
Yeah.
They have hired me because of my particular style. So they want that style. And that's very happy. I'm very happy to provide that style. At the same time, it might need tweaking to fit in with a brand guideline or a shoot specific requirement and things like that. And so again, going back to being flexible, it is all about being flexible. If you put your foot down and say, I'm not changing this, I'm an artist, the chances are you probably won't get hired again.
Yeah.
Whereas actually you kind of go, well, actually, fine. I'm all right with that. I think that would be fine. And a lot of the time, a client will come and say, we'd like to change this. And I say, do you know what? Actually, I really like that particular part, but what if we did this and this? And they'd be like, great. And so it's very much, you're not hiring a photographer with 6 months of experience with his first camera. You're hiring someone with going on 20 years of experience.
Yeah.
And that's why I think, people charge what they do is, you're not paying for the photography. You're paying for the photography plus all the experience. And, that experience comes with the flexibility of being able to fix pretty much any problem that comes up on a shoot. If we do a shoot, there is probably very few problems that could still come up that I haven't faced before.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's an interesting one when you talk about kind of client satisfaction and client customer service, because it's so collaborative and because the respect is there. We all know what we're going to get, and because you're hiring someone with such a consistent portfolio or a consistent look, you pretty much know what you're going to get from the off. It's just making sure everyone's aware of that, I guess.
Was that pre-planning for that type of communication something that got bred out of, a shoot that didn't quite work out how you thought it was going to, or was that just as you stepped up the tiers of level, that was something that was demanded of you?
It's probably a bit of both. I mean, I've been very lucky in my career that I've had very few shoots go south. And considering I've done thousands of shoots now, that's not a bad average.
Yeah.
But like, I've always, I'm the kind of guy who has lid organizers in every Pelly case. And in those lid organizers are super glue, waterproof matches, gaff tape, syringes, odd clamps, clips, tourniquets, you name it. I've got something in there to be able to fix a boom. I've got screws to fit every single bit of kit that I own. There's ratchet sets, there's things like that. So actually, sorry, I've completely lost the train of thought. I was getting so excited about all my equipment. but what I'm saying is that because I've been so prepared over the years, I genuinely went. I've never had I've not had many situations where I haven't been able to fix it. As far as equipment and stuff goes, I've had a couple of people, I photographed a band years and years ago, and one of the guys was maybe slightly more inebriated than the others, and he fell backwards through the backdrop and pulled the whole thing down in a hotel foyer. And none of us were expecting that.
Yeah.
But other than that, I can very much probably count the times things have gone south on my left hand.
Yeah.
Because
that's great.
By the time, and actually, I've got to say thank you to my career in music photography for kind of giving me that level of things can go wrong. You need to be able to fix it. I toured the world with some amazing techs. So there's a guy called Mark McNabb Jack who's a fantastic drum tech, drummer, producer, you name it. He's got all the hats. But then Dean, my friend Dean, who was with Sam Smith. And there's Frank. There's all sorts of amazing guys who I've learned tricks from, and they'd be like, oh, well, actually, we don't do it like this, we do it like that, and I'm like, oh, great. So I would get custom flight cases made up like those guys, and I would have mini toolkits in the cases like those guys. It's how I learn. And so because I had all those bits and bobs, I was kind of ready for when things did go wrong.
Is very prepared. And now going into this next pivot, because you've been doing, would it be fair to say you've kind of been commercial photography as of the last wee while? And I mean, you've done some fairly large campaigns now. I think I remember at one point, if you were driving around in Texas, you would most likely be seeing your photos on the billboards.
Yeah, that was a fun one. I really enjoyed that. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to work with some amazing clients. I think that's probably how I would put it. The thing is, the pivot that I'm doing now is more within the same realm. So with music, I pivoted to commercial, and it was almost a full 180 pivot. Like that was a massive change. The changes that I'm going through now are, having been able to spend this time through lockdown, looking at my portfolio, looking at websites, looking at how I present myself, and really, taking a step back. I don't have them now, but I have a magnetic whiteboard here where I normally magnet my entire portfolio up, and so I can change around the order and things like that. And I've really been able to kind of look back at my work and figure out what's missing from it, where I want to take it, and things like that. So without saying too much, because I'm still really in the finalization of the planning, I'll still be doing what I am doing, but with higher production values and much more planning, if that can be a thing. But higher production values, a higher level of retouch, and basically just elevating my craft. I think it's probably the best way I could put it.
Yeah, and the thing I always like we talked about before this, that there's not certainty around it. Like you're always very willing, I guess, to kind of move yourself to further your career and develop personally into an area that's not, it's not guaranteed, which I think's commendable, and I think that's probably why, apart from obviously talent, would be one of the reasons that you would be pivoting up the ladder more than others, because you're actually willing to take risks, and calculated risks indeed.
Calculated risks is probably a better way, but I agree. I mean, the thing is, it's graft really. At the end of the day, it's there'll be no point in my career where I stop working like I do.
Yeah.
At no point I'm not expecting to get to 40 and be like, oh, I can kick back and relax.
Yeah.
Great, everything's done. I'm very much of the opinion that we never stop learning, we never stop connecting with people. You've just got to stay on top of everyone's radars and introduce yourself to people and things like that. So yeah, it's fine. It's a challenge as well, because I never want to feel like I'm coasting, and I feel maybe that when I was working in music, I maybe was coasting a little bit. Sorry.
Yeah.
Or maybe was coasting a little bit, and I was just like, I think you get not complacent. I do think when you shoot the same thing a lot, maybe you do kind of just fall into a bit of a a pattern.
Yeah.
And for me, I just kind of was just like, right, I don't want to have that. I don't want to be that guy. I want to be that guy who is, properly staying on top of things and pushing myself forward and constantly trying to improve. It's
Yeah.
like whenever I have meetings with people, people like agents and stuff, I will always mail them and just say, thanks for your call. Have you got time for feedback? And
Yeah.
I'll get it. And people have been incredibly generous. Sorry, it's not COVID, it's asthma. People have been incredibly generous over the past couple of years, providing feedback. And the thing is, it's something that I never really got in music because, well, I never asked. I think it comes with experience. This is it, right? I think it comes with experience. The only way of you improving is by finding people that are completely objective,
Yeah.
and them going, really liked your presentation. The bits where you fell down were X, Y, and Z. Because the next presentation you do, you are not going to do those same mistakes.
What's surprised you the most from feedback where you didn't expect it?
The people really like the work. I think you come out of a lot of meetings and then be like, oh, they hate it. Whereas actually a lot of people were like, oh, that was great. Really enjoyed it. But the time's not right, or there's no jobs currently that would be fitting, and it's all about timing when you get to a certain level. Hence why you always just keep on people's radars. And for me, I think the most surprising thing is there have been a couple of people in my career who have been really honest, and I could not have appreciated it anymore.
Yeah.
So Emma, Charlotte, they might not watch, and if they do watch, honestly, from the bottom of my heart, I could not appreciate your honesty anymore, because the only way you're truly going to improve, the people you don't listen to are your friends and family, right? Because they don't want to upset you.
Yeah.
Like, you kind of go, Mum, what do you think of this photograph? She's going to go, it's lovely. Even if it's the worst photograph, even if you just presented her an unexposed frame, she'd be like, I see what you were trying to do there. It's fantastic. Great. Whereas, and you've got to find people in your world who effectively act as your boardroom, right?
Yeah.
So I've got like I have a group of people I refer to as the board, and I don't even know if they know they're on the board, but they're people that if I send something to, I can guarantee that they will send me a utterly honest answer.
Yeah.
And if it's good, then I know I'm on the right kind of path.
Yeah.
And it's people like that. People might get upset by criticism. You can't, because actually, if you listen to it and if it's valid, because I think that's important, because if people provide criticism and you go, that's not right, and if they're the only person saying it. I always look for criticism that comes from 3 or 4 people, because or even 2 people, if more than one person is picking something up, you go, that needs to change.
Yeah.
And hence me doing this mini pivot now is, when I've been having these meetings, people have gone, lovely, but what if you did this? And a couple of people have said it, and I'm like, right, well, what if I did that? If it doesn't work, I can always just come back. I can always go and do something else. I can always kind of, again, flexibility. I can go off and do this. I can go off and do that. And photography is an incredibly generous kind of living. If you, not generous living, generous in the way that it offers you so many different pathways. You know, you could go off and photograph teeth for a living. You could go off and photograph crime scenes. You could go off and photograph, you know, muzzle velocity of tanks firing shells. You know, there is so many different, you know, and obviously less niche things, like you can go photograph weddings and people and, you know, all that other stuff. The muzzle flash stuff, though, fascinating. But, you know, like there's so many routes and pathways that it can take you off, that I still find that incredibly freeing.
Yeah.
You know, if I kind of go, well, actually, I'm not enjoying this pathway, well, I'll go off and try another pathway.
Yeah.
It might be a year or two where it's a little uncomfortable, but, you know.
Yeah. Do you,
right.
when you look back, I mean, I love the saying that most people overestimate what they can achieve in 1 year and underestimate what they can achieve in 10. Mm-hmm. When you look back, like, say, 10 years ago to now, how far off or how different do you reckon, you know, you've gone from where you thought you would go?
Let's shorten that distance. Well, actually, no. Let me take that question as is. I never thought by the age of 21 I would have done the amount of traveling I had done. I never thought I would have seen the same amount of the world I would have done. You know, I got to 25 and realized that I'd seen pretty much everything I had ever wanted to see as a kid.
Yeah.
You know, I had done more than I ever thought I would have done in my entire lifetime. And that's just from an experience point of view. You know, and I would get to do cool things and things that I really remember, like shooting in New York on a rooftop in downtown Manhattan, you know, with all of Manhattan in the background and things like that. You know, and things like that really resonate with me. But how different am I to? Was the question, how different am I?
Like how different is like your kind of career gone from 10 years ago to now than what you thought you would have gone in 10 years? Like how far have you got, you know, further than you thought you would have gone? Are you behind where you thought you would have gone to? Is it completely different to where you thought you were going?
It's completely different to how I thought I was going to be going.
Yeah.
And in a good way. And I am behind, but I don't think I would have ever seen myself. I don't think I would have ever been able to take stock and been like, oh, I'm doing really well. I'm not that kind of guy. I think I will always, even if I was way further ahead than I currently am, I would have still thought that I was behind. Right?
Yeah.
So I think what maybe a better question would be is, how different am I now to this time last year? And this past, what are we in now? We're in November. I was like, this previous year, so the previous 12 months, I have learned and changed more as a human and as a photographer than in the previous 20 years.
Yeah.
And now everything has elevated. Everything is on a different level. You know, everything is in a database. You know, everything is organized. If people, you know, if you say, have you got the model release for that shoot you did, I can put it up in the database. Everything is super organized. The tech is now at a point where I don't have to touch anything now. Like, I feel that I kind of have really turned a corner and I'm understanding what's truly important in a career.
Yeah.
Because I think if I could go back and tell myself like a bit of advice when I was young, I'd be like, stop buying equipment. Just stop. Honestly, just stop. Because over, and I think this is really, it's January to November that has seen the biggest change. Because when I was in January, I bought some Leica cameras for my professional work. They were going to be my workhorse cameras. Yeah. And that Leica purchase was the 7th system swap in 3 years.
Yeah.
And actually, what I didn't realize and what I didn't spend time understanding was you learn the files, you learn how to edit them, you learn how they respond, you learn how to get your favorite color out of them, you learn how the highlights roll off, you learn how the shadow detail can be brought back. And actually, if you're changing camera systems every 4 months or 3 months, you're not spending enough time with any different files to be able to... Sorry, can you hear that in the background?
I heard it. A squeak.
My daughter is being tickled by her grandma, and it is the cutest noise ever.
Oh.
So if you're hearing that and wondering what it is, that is what it is.
Oh,
Grandma's here.
lovely.
So yeah, and I wish I could transport back in time. And this is why I know time travel doesn't exist, because otherwise I would have gone back and I would have been like, no. But like it, I really wish I hadn't wasted all that time and money doing the system swaps and buying the gear that I thought I needed.
Yeah.
What I have learned this year is that necessity now is the biggest driver. So I will absolutely not buy anything on a whim anymore. There's no point.
Yeah.
You don't need it. If you're going, oh, I want that, don't buy it. If you need it, buy it.
Yeah.
And so you'll find yourself buying very, very different things. Like, I
Yeah.
don't want to buy gaff tape, but I need to buy gaff tape. It's a useful thing to have. It'll fix anything. But like, I don't. I would have saved thousands upon thousands of pounds had I had this conversation with myself 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah.
So
what would be your advice to, like, not just photographers, but kind of any budding professional getting into the early days of their careers and their work as a freelancer?
There's so many bits of advice.
Well, go on. Give me your top couple. What jumps to mind?
What jumps to mind? You have to be friendly to everyone, because you never know. You're always nice on the way up, because you never know who you'll meet on the way down, right? Yeah. So all this work you're putting in, this point actually has 2 separate points. There's a lot of people who live hand to mouth, so I'm hoping this is kind of helpful. Maybe not helpful now, considering it's very hard to do anything about it, but after COVID and everything's back to normal, that might help. But you're always nice to people on the way up, because you never know who you're going to meet on the way down. But also, you'll get more work being nice. Don't ever lose your rag. If someone sends you an email and you're really cross about it, breathe. Don't answer it. Come back to it the following day, having discussed it with someone. There's very rarely something that can't be fixed with a polite phone call or something like that. So just always keep your temper under control. Never fly off the handle or get cross or anything. And if you're getting frustrated with someone, for example, if you're trying to explain to someone on a shoot to do something and they're not doing it, take a look, because actually that might be you not explaining properly. It might not be on them. You might be getting frustrated with them not understanding, but it might be because you're explaining things in a terrible way. Yeah. I was absolutely awful at explaining things years ago, and now I explain it like I'm explaining it to not a child, because that obviously can come across as patronizing, but I explain things exactly how I want things done and as clearly as I want them done. Yeah. So actually, there can't be any mistakes, and there can't be any room for misunderstanding. Yeah. That's great. And then if you're going to be coming into the creative industries, be aware that it's peaks and troughs. It is. There might be people with meteoric careers that go like that, and more power to them. But that is not the majority rule. The majority rule is that you will have to tough it out through good times and bad. And when the sun shines, put a little extra away. Yeah. Just have it in an account, and don't touch it and be like, that is right there is a rainy day fund. And that's not rainy day for in case it rains when you go on holiday. Like that is your, I don't have any jobs for 2 months. I have savings in the bank, so I don't have to worry. And instead of worrying, I can concentrate on making sure that I do have work coming up. Yeah. Because if you're worrying, you're going to be stressed. You're going to make poor decisions. You might have to take on jobs you might not necessarily want to do. There's going to be things that you're forced to do because you don't have that buffer. But actually having that buffer in the bank means that you can relax, you can take stock, you can organize the website, you can curate, you can kind of go, well, actually, style-wise, maybe that wasn't working for me. I want to take my work off in that direction and things like that.
That's great.
And then third and finally, get an accountant. No, honestly, seriously, I have not had to worry about my accounts since I was 21.
Yeah. And you don't have to pay much tax once you get an accountant. It's great.
Do you know what? It's not even that. I pay my fair share. The trouble is, it's more about the stress. So I'm not Zen or anything like that, right? But like, I do believe that if you have a lower level of stress, you'll make better decisions. You'll make better decisions.
Too right.
Apparently, yeah, that's what happens. No, but if you remove items of, remove things in your life that are causing you stress. So if you have a friend that has been difficult and you're friends really because of history and you don't really like each other and you're forcing each other to hang out, why are you friends?
Yeah.
Like, cut them loose. I'm very much a. There is an amazing quote from a. Now this is where I get it wrong. He was either Bulgarian or was he Czech. I can't remember. But he was an artist and and a sculptor, I think, and he had met with Picasso, and he had said, and someone had said, "Oh wow, you met with Picasso. What was he like?" And he just turned to them, apparently stone cold, and just went, "He's a vampire." And so my motto, and I've kind of stuck with this for years and years and years, is I don't go around vampires. And it's not like a kind of like Alan Partridge with a shower curtain kind of scenario, but it is, people who drain, sorry, people who drain you emotionally, creatively, financially, they're all vampires.
Yeah.
Get rid. You will find yourself far better off in life, far calmer, far more stressed, and probably with more money in the bank when you don't have these people who are sucking your various life forces from it. Again, sounds spiritual. It's not. But basically, we've all been around people who are emotionally draining. You'll come out of hanging out with them and you'll be like, oh my God, that guy, too much. And if you're coming out exhausted, you want to be around people that inspire you. You want to be around people where you can come away and be like, great, I feel like super energized to go off and do X, Y, and Z. You don't want to be around the opposite. Yeah. So, get an accountant, avoid vampires.
And I've got 2 more questions that I wanted to ask you. One.
What's that?
What? Bring the gun out.
Mate. 2 questions.
He's tired.
Oh dear, long day.
Yeah, I can tell. What would
hit me?
What would be something that would surprise people about your career or you that you don't think's apparent on the surface? Something kind of behind the scenes about you and your work that most people would be surprised about.
That I love organization and I love capital letters. So all my call sheets, all my numbering in my hard drives, all my references, everything is all in caps. I've no idea why. It's just always been that way. Probably stems from the first ever shoot, and I accidentally had caps lock on it. It's just rolled with it.
Yeah, mate.
Do you know what? I don't know. I'm kind of private, but kind of not. I'm starting to become less private on Instagram and sharing more about myself. I think maybe, well, probably doesn't surprise people, but I am a huge tech fan. Like, as far as tech goes, I have systems in place. For example, I have a panel here where I can turn that light off. And I have remote control lighting in my office for when I do interviews and stuff like this. My attention to detail on the level of tech might surprise people because it is very nerdy.
It's crazy. I remember once I was asking you about, you weren't even, I don't think you had shot with Nikon for for years, and I had a Nikon, and I was asking you about lenses, and you managed to go through almost every Nikon lens that was available to buy, and these weren't even like professional grade lenses. These are like going down into probably hobby and enthusiast lenses. And it was like it was like just typing in Google for a review, and you just boom, pick it out, go.
Look, here's the thing, right? Cameras have been my passion for pretty much since I was about 5 years old. There is, you know, I'm not going to pretend that I know everything about cameras, but I've been asked enough over the years, what camera should I buy, and things that actually I have sat and watched the telly and done research on all sorts of lenses from all different manufacturers and stuff like that. So if you do go, I need a 16mm Sigma DC, I'll be like, well, that's roughly between 350 to 400 pounds. You might be able to speak to MBP and get it a bit cheaper, but if you're VAT reg, there's probably no point.
Yeah.
And little things like that. But at the same time, it comes back down to me being prepared because, for example, I've got, spare caps for everything, and because I've had so many system swaps, I have a box in here which is just spare caps. But I really should sell the Leica ones. The Leica and the Phase 1 caps I should sell because they're proper money. but I really do love cameras. I really do love photography. Well, like it's been a career that's afforded me more experience and privilege and more experience is really than I would ever have achieved with any other career. Yeah. I've traveled all over the world. I've lived in refugee camps. I've photographed multiple times in the Houses of Parliament. I've traveled to rest stops in Idaho, and bizarre little things like that, and I've loved pretty much every second of it. Apart from I had an 18-hour layover in Nairobi Airport. And Nairobi Airport, if you are watching this, I'll speak directly to you. You need better benches.
You're a big man.
That was a long time. Yeah,
you wouldn't fit on me.
Long time ago. But it's I just love gear, don't I?
You do. What have you ever been starstruck with anyone that you've photographed?
No, and you know why? I'll paraphrase because obviously I don't know your audience, but I will paraphrase because I was chatting to someone quite early on in my career, and I just said, you've met and photographed all the stars. I probably didn't say it like that, but I was like, you've photographed everyone. Like, surely you get starstruck. And he goes, nah, man, we all bleed red.
Yeah.
And I was like, of course we do. It's not quite how he said it. He said all our shit. He said all our shit stinks. But I was like, and I was just like, do you know what? Like, they're people like you and I. Like, it's very hard to get. I can be in awe of someone's accomplishments, but I'm never in awe of them.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm always impressed at what they've managed to do. So if someone comes out, when I photographed Chris Hoy's a lovely guy, lovely chap, and but going in, I wasn't like, oh my god, I got a photograph of Chris Hoy. I was just like, I want to ask him what it was like when he got his final medal. Yeah. Like I want to ask him what it was feeling like, standing on that podium, knowing that it might be the last time, and then like looking back on his career and being like, what was your favorite moment? Rather than going, oh my god, he's here. I'm more want to talk to them about their accomplishments or what they like and things like that. So I don't know. No, not really.
Not the starstruck and all. Good man.
No. Well,
and if you ever
bleed red. So.
That's right. Yeah. Have you ever been, I guess, like worried or scared on a shoot? Has anything happened where you're like, oh shit, this is a bit uncomfy?
Yes. I took off in a helicopter and I'd never done that before, and that was terrifying because obviously when you take off in a plane, you're used to going forward and up, whereas when you take off in a helicopter, you go up and then every single plane you're doing that on.
Yeah.
And I don't know if the guy I was with had told the pilot to basically make us worry a little bit, but it was terrifying. Also, I'm a big fan of redundancy. Not obviously people losing their jobs, that's terrible, but like I'm a big fan of like making sure there's a backup. And in a helicopter, there's no redundancy for that that main blade, right? Like if that goes, like,
yeah. How about
it happens.
How about when you did South Sudan? Did you get worried when you were there?
I was very out of my depth when I landed in the local airport after transferring out of Nairobi. When I landed in Juba, and I was met off the plane with multiple people with machine guns, and basically stopped and being like, "What's in the case?" Because I used to fly all my lights and stands in this one big long pelly case, and it turns out it's a very similar case to what they smuggle guns in. Who knew? And so I did kind of think, wow, it would be amazing if I'd managed to smuggle a gun from London all the way to Juba and then get stopped on the tarmac at Juba.
Yeah.
And then there had been a mix-up, and when I was being interviewed by the immigration officials, he had pulled up the wrong gear list from that hadn't been submitted on my behalf, the wrong gear list, because there was another crew flying in on a later flight from the BBC or a news outlet, and he was just like, he was proper kicking off about my equipment, and so I basically had to just say, yes, this is a radio microphone. It wasn't. It was like a flash trigger or something, but I basically just had to blag that. That was a little hairy because obviously that I was a long way from home.
Yeah.
But no, other than that, I've been really lucky. I've traveled all over, and it's rare that I've ever felt scared or worried, and that comes down to planning, because I never put myself in a situation where I could, I always try and mitigate as many risks as possible.
Yeah.
So, and because of that, I've been very lucky that I've managed to avoid most things. There's obviously some things I can't talk about, but
yeah,
that's for me and you down the pub when they open.
Yeah, too right, mate. Out of level 3.
That's it, damn right.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. So probably this time next year.
Yeah.
But I've been very lucky in my career.
Yeah,
basically.
That's great. Well, thanks for your time, Tom. It's been a pleasure to talk to you.
Mate,
before you go, where can people find you?
So, rather imaginatively, my website is tombarnes.com. I know what you're thinking. Yeah. How did he come up with that? But if you want to follow me on Instagram, it's tombarnes.com, and that's just DOTCOM after my name. And yeah, that's basically it.
Great. Well, there you go, people. Follow Tom. You'll see a lot of great images and some mediocre jokes.
I think it's the other way around, but
good man. Well, thanks for your time, Tom, and good luck for the rest of the lockdown.
Mate, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for watching. If you want to join the revolution, follow and subscribe here. And if you want to revolutionize the way your business and your life is run, then contact us to find out more about our consulting and coaching packages. You can contact us via email, admin@hustonconsultants.co.uk.